Welcome back to my channel. Today, we step into the courtroom where the walls themselves seem to hold their breath. The air was frozen, every whisper swallowed, every eye fixed on the woman trembling at the center of it all. Robin Brown. Her hands shook as she clutched a folder that could shatter not just a marriage, but a legacy. Behind her, Kody's jaw locked like a man trying to cage his own panic. And across the room, Mary didn't flinch. Her stare burned not with heartbreak, but with retribution. What began as a private fracture within a family had erupted into a public firestorm. No cameras, no press. Just truth, stripped bare, waiting to be judged. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about evidence. And what unfolded behind those courtroom doors was the story TLC never wanted you to hear. Decades of secrets. Testimonies that left even the judge speechless. A family so divided it made everyone question whether the sister wives ever truly knew one another at all. So buckle up, because this isn't just another courtroom drama. This is the trial that ended an empire. But when the final gavel falls, tell me, who's truly guilty? The courtroom wasn't glamorous. No chandeliers, no polished mahogany, just flickering fluorescent lights, worn leather seats, and a judge who'd seen too many families torn apart to pretend shock anymore. Even he couldn't help but glance, again and again, at the defendant's table. Kody Brown. His suit screamed confidence, but his body language betrayed collapse. Sweat gathered at his temple, his jaw, so tight it could shatter glass. To his right, Robin leaned in, whispering something only he could hear. To his left, nothing. No other wives, no support. Across the aisle sat Christine, steady but trembling, her fingertips tapping the oak table, a rhythm of nerves and conviction. Behind her, Janelle, head bowed, unreadable. And in the very back stood Mary, arms crossed, refusing to sit, refusing to acknowledge the chaos as anything more than expected. When the bailiff called the court to order, the silence felt like mourning. Judge Mahoney adjusted his glasses and began. Not like a judge, but like a man presiding over a funeral. Today's hearings concern allegations of emotional manipulation, financial fraud, and undue influence within a polygamous family structure. Let the record reflect, this is not a divorce proceeding. This is a civil case filed by Christine Brown against Kody Brown and Robin Brown. Gasps. A cough. And then, silence again. Christine didn't blink. Her gaze locked on Kody. Not in anger, but in exhaustion. The kind of weariness that comes from years of pretending everything's fine. Her lawyers, a silver-haired woman with a voice like steel, rose. Your Honor, we will demonstrate this was not simply a marriage in decline. It was a calculated campaign, one designed to isolate, deplete, and emotionally dismantle my client under the guise of faith and family. And it was done not just by Kody Brown, but with the full knowledge and encouragement of Robin Brown. The word gaslighting hit the room like a thunderclap. Janelle's eyes lifted. For the first time, recognition. Validation. Robin's hands twisted in her lap, her mask beginning to crumble. Then came the first bombshell, Christine's journal. Leather-bound, tabbed, highlighted, a decade of patterns and pain. Your Honor, the attorney said, these pages document deliberate manipulation, financial control, and statements designed to make my client question her own sanity. The judge allowed a few entries to be read aloud. Christine's voice was steady, heartbreak sharpened into truth. Kody told me that God whispers louder to Robin, that if I truly had faith, I wouldn't need reassurance. I asked if our daughters deserved the same love. He said I was making it about me again. Maybe I am, but maybe I have to. Because when a woman starts questioning her sanity, it's not doubt, it's damage. The courtroom froze. Even the stenographer stopped typing, and then, a twist. Robin's attorney stood. Your Honor, we have text messages from Christine to Janelle, proof she planned to leave years ago, perhaps seeking financial retaliation. Screens lit up. Private texts flickered in the darkened room. I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted from pretending. Maybe if I walk away, they'll finally see the truth, or they'll blame me for breaking the illusion. Janelle shifted, guilt and fear mixing in her eyes, and for the first time, the entire courtroom understood. This wasn't just a trial. It was a reckoning, a decade of buried pain clawing its way into the light. The courtroom had long stopped breathing the moment Christine took the stand. She was being pulled into this storm now, whether she wanted to or not. But Christine did not retreat. She stood firm, her voice steady yet shaking with years of suppressed truth. "Yes," she began, "I thought about leaving, but that doesn't erase what happened. That proves I was trying to survive it." Across the room, Robin leaned toward her lawyer, pale as though she'd just seen her reflection crack. Kody's jaw tightened. His control, his lifelong armor, was beginning to fracture. Then came the moment no one saw coming. The judge leaned forward. "I want both parties to provide a psychological assessment by the end of this week. This case is not about events alone. It's about the effect of influence. If emotional coercion is in question, we require professional input." The words hit Kody like thunder. His confidence faltered. He wasn't prepared to be examined, not by the law, not by science, and not by truth. Robin reached for his hand, but he didn't hold back. Control hides best in gentle tones and soft words, but when exposed, it trembles. That was when Janelle stood, calm yet commanding. "Your Honor," she said quietly, "I know I'm not a direct party, but when the time is right, I'd like to speak. I lived it too." The judge nodded, acknowledging the weight of what had been said. Outside, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Cameras were barred from entering, but the headlines had already begun. Christine versus Kody Brown, the trial that shattered the family. But for Christine, this was never about fame. It was about the years she lost, the nights she cried behind locked doors, pretending everything was fine for the cameras, the moments she shielded her children from a reality they were too young to understand. Back inside, Kody leaned toward Robin, whispering through clenched teeth, "She's painting me as a monster." Robin said nothing, because maybe, deep down, a part of her wondered, what if Christine wasn't lying? What if all of them had seen it too, but chose to ignore it? The judge called for recess. But no one really moved. Eyes avoided meeting. Something irreversible had begun. A crack that no law, no doctrine, no apology could repair. Christine began to gather her papers. Janelle slipped into the chair beside her. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Silence now was solidarity. But it was Mary, standing quietly at the back, who lingered long after the rest had gone. She stared at the judge's bench as if she knew her own day there would come. Christine may have started this reckoning, but what came next could expose more than anyone was ready to face. The next morning, gray skies hung over the courthouse like a warning. Christine arrived first, her face calm but sleepless. Janelle walked beside her now, no longer just a bystander, but an ally. Minutes later, Kody entered with Robin, dressed in a dark green dress that couldn't disguise the tremor in her hands. Kody's gaze was fixed ahead. Gone was his confidence. What remained was the shadow of a man who had lost his dominion. Then the clerk called the first witness, Janelle Brown. The courtroom stirred. She had always been the rational one, the peacemaker, but today she wasn't here to mediate. She was here to testify. She took the oath, adjusted the microphone, and exhaled. "This isn't easy for me," she said. "I stood up for this family. I defended him. But I can't lie anymore. Christine isn't lying, and it wasn't just her." Kody's face twisted in disbelief. His attorney rose, but the judge silenced him with a single gesture. "Let her continue." Janelle's voice sharpened. "We weren't spiritually married. We were spiritually silenced. And the difference between obedience and silence is fear." Every word cut deeper. She described the nights Christine wept after being punished with distance. How disagreements meant days of exile. How calls went unanswered. And how Robin, though never overtly cruel, always benefited from Christine's punishment. Then came the money. "We weren't equals," Janelle continued. Kody said everything was shared. But when Christine's daughter needed surgery, she had to beg for funds. When Robin's kids needed braces, the payment was already made. Christine's lawyer presented financial statements, withdrawals that mirrored the dates of the family's worst fights. On one of those days, Christine had been told, "Your lack of faith is causing problems for this family." That same day, $3,200 had been transferred to Robin's account. When asked why she never questioned it, Janelle's reply was chilling. "I did, once. Kody told me loyalty is proven by sacrifice, not suspicion. That God favored Robin because she believed without questioning. But faith isn't blindness. It's not control wrapped in scripture. The judge leaned forward. Even the air felt heavier now. Then Madison, Janelle's daughter, took the stand. No makeup, no pretense. When I was 14, she said, Dad told us some mothers bring division, and when that happens, the blessings on their children lessen. He made us believe that if we stood by Mom, we'd lose God's favor. A gasp rippled through the court. Christine covered her face. Tears fell silently. Kody erupted. I didn't say that. That's out of context. Sit down, Mr. Brown, the judge ordered sharply. Then came the bombshell. Christine's attorney played a recording, Truly's voice, shaky but clear, speaking to her father. Kody's response echoed through the courtroom. Your mom thinks she knows better. She's poisoning the family spirit. If she keeps this up, I'll have to protect what's left, even if that means limiting how often I see you. The room froze. Christine nearly collapsed. Janelle caught her. Robin went white as chalk. I didn't know, she whispered. Kody's defense argued it wasn't a legal recording, but the judge allowed it to remain for context of pattern. Then, in a rare twist, the judge turned to Kody. Mr. Brown, I've reviewed the psychological reports. Would you like to respond? Kody rose. No longer furious, just hollow. Yes, he said quietly. I am a man of order. I guided my family spiritually. But they always had free will. Christine left because she wanted freedom, not because I harmed her. The judge tilted his head. And yet, did your belief in divine authority grant you unchecked control? Kody hesitated. It gave me responsibility. Christine spoke then, soft but searing. No, it gave you power. And you wielded it. The judge called adjournment, but before anyone could stand, Christine rose. I have more to say, she declared. This isn't revenge. This is release. So our daughters never have to heal from what we hid. The courtroom fell silent, holy almost. The judge nodded slowly. Then we continue tomorrow. Outside, thunder rolled. The storm had finally arrived. Cameras flashed, but Christine didn't flinch. She didn't look at the lenses, the reporters, the lights. Her eyes were fixed on the small hands of her daughters, two of them there to support her, holding tightly to each other as if their grip could anchor her in the storm. And Robin, she didn't leave with Kody. She sat alone for several minutes after the courtroom had emptied, staring at the polished table, the place where she once believed she was the favorite. Now that belief felt like a cruel joke, a euphemism for being manipulated, used, and overlooked. Truth doesn't fracture families. Secrets do. The courtroom was colder that morning, not in temperature, but in air and aura. Something had shifted overnight. The facade had cracked, leaving jagged fragments too sharp to navigate. Christine climbed the witness stand with measured steps, hands tightly clasped in her lap. Her posture was rigid, her lips trembling just enough to betray the tension inside. She gazed at no one, because if she allowed her eyes to meet theirs, she might break. And today, she couldn't afford to break. State your name for the record, the clerk prompted. Christine Ruth Brown, she said, swallowing hard, the words almost catching in her throat. And your purpose here today? To tell the truth, everything. She fumbled with the microphone. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. I was 21 when I joined this family, Christine began, her voice soft but resolute. I thought I was entering something sacred, something larger than myself. I believed polygamy was about togetherness, about support. But it wasn't. It was about hierarchy. And I was at the bottom. Robin turned her face away. Kody remained impassive, his jaw a rigid line. Christine's voice quivered now, with the weight of decades of subtle cruelty. The manipulation didn't start with screams. It began quietly. A glance, a word, a suggestion. Questioning Kody was framed as questioning God. The judge leaned forward, elbows resting on the bench, fingers interlocked beneath his chin. Go on. I surrendered myself in increments, Christine continued, her voice breaking slightly. I went where I was told. I smiled for the cameras while crumbling inside. I homeschooled 6 children while obeying invisible rules. I wasn't grateful enough, and whenever I asked for help, I was reminded how Robin had it worse, how she was more patient, how she never complained. Silence isn't peace when it's enforced. It's obedience disguised as oppression. Her lawyer asked carefully, "Can you describe the moment you realized this wasn't just a bad marriage?" Christine nodded. It was the evening Truly had a high fever. Kody was supposed to come over. I called him 3 times. He didn't answer. Later, I found out he was with Robin watching a movie. When he finally called back, he said, "I can't be everywhere. You chose this life too." That was the moment I realized I hadn't chosen this version of life. I had been groomed into it. A pen clattered to the floor behind the courtroom. Even the journalists were shocked. "Did you speak to Robin about this imbalance?" the attorney pressed. Christine looked directly at her for the first time. "I did. I told her I felt invisible." She said, "Kody leads with his heart. Perhaps you need more faith." Robin's eyes welled with tears. Christine's voice hardened. It wasn't just emotional manipulation. It was financial, spiritual, psychological. I was blamed for things I hadn't even realized. Robin was rewarded for her compliance. Kody used God as a weapon. If we argued, I was told, "The spirit has left this house because of your attitude." If I questioned money, I was accused of inviting darkness. He never struck me, but he didn't need to. He made me believe leaving would condemn my children. Kody's lawyer finally interjected. "Christine, weren't you recorded years ago saying you believed in the principles and felt at peace?" "I did. But peace based on fear is not peace. It is obedience." Robin jumped to her feet. "May I be heard, Your Honor?" Kody froze. His lawyer shook his head. The judge allowed it. "I never asked to be the favorite," Robin said, voice brittle. "I obeyed what I thought was right." I didn't realize Christine felt this way. Christine spun toward her. "You did. You pleaded with me to be supportive when I wanted to quit filming. You told me not to disrupt the family image." Robin's lips trembled. "I believed keeping the family intact was God's will." The judge interjected sharply. "Mrs. Brown, do you deny benefiting unfairly from joint accounts?" Robin hesitated. Then, barely above a whisper, "No, I don't deny it." Gasps filled the courtroom. Everyone turned to Christine, but she didn't flinch. Christine's revelation cut deeper. She hadn't opened that account. Kody had. Using her name and Mary's forged signature, he siphoned thousands from Brown Family Ventures into a private fund, claiming it was for emergencies. The last balance Christine saw? Over $92,000. The gallery erupted. People scrambled for phones. The judge's gavel slammed down. "Order. Sit down, or I will clear this courtroom." This wasn't fraud anymore. It was financial identity theft. Christine felt herself pulled fully into the storm. Mary's glare bore into her. "I didn't know," Christine whispered. "I swear I didn't know he used my name." But Mary wasn't angry. She was stunned, because now this was bigger than either of them. It was about all of them. The court recessed for a private reading of Robin's papers. Kody was escorted out, reluctantly. Christine and Mary waited together in the cold corridor. "I told myself for so long he was just flustered," Mary murmured. "They weren't lies to keep the family going," Christine said softly. "They were lies for control. Sometimes the greatest betrayal isn't what someone does to you. It's what they make you believe about yourself when they do it." Meanwhile, in an antechamber, prosecutors examined USB drives filled with bank statements, wire transfers, and a spreadsheet marked B-Plan, funds associated with Christine's name, electronically signed by M. Brown, a forged signature. When court resumed, the mood had shifted entirely. Kody sat slumped, exposed, cornered. The judge's eyes were steady. "Based on the new evidence," he announced, "preliminary determinations of willful financial deceit, forgery, and misrepresentation have been made. Objection, slander." Kody's voice shook. "You are not objecting," the judge said coldly. "You are under investigation. I am taking the document's word over yours, Mr. Brown." Kody's voice trembled further. "You're taking them over me. These women, they despise me. They're resentful." The judge didn't blink. "The evidence speaks for itself, Mr. Brown." Back in the gallery, the atmosphere had shifted entirely. The chatter, the whispers, the divided opinions, all of it had vanished. This was no longer a story about fractured marriages or private grudges. This was about consequences. Legal, undeniable consequences. Fans watching online who had once been split in opinion now held a single, unified expectation: justice. Even Robin's most loyal defenders felt the ground shift beneath them. Christine, meanwhile, had disappeared. She had struck, admitted the truths, and then vanished like a shadow. Days passed. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her lawyer offered nothing. Rumors swirled. Had she fled town, entered rehab, gone underground fearing retaliation? No one knew. But one thing was certain. The woman who once wept quietly for peace was now the one igniting the flames. One afternoon, Christine sat in her car after court, hands trembling as she scrolled through old voicemails from Kody. Apologies, blame, manipulation, a lifetime condensed into digital files. With deliberate finality, she deleted them all, blocked his number, severed one more tether to her past. Mary, in contrast, emerged from the courthouse into a storm. Rain poured over her, soaking her clothes, streaming down her face, and she let it. Each droplet felt like a baptism, washing away years of silence. Alone in the courtroom, she had stood her ground. Now, in the storm, she no longer felt alone. Her truth had been spoken, and that truth could never be taken back. The following morning, an emergency hearing was called. The district attorney moved swiftly. Someone had attempted to access one of the accounts tied to the fraud. Not Kody, not Robin, someone else. A third player had emerged, and their actions could collapse the entire house of cards. But who and why? Mary had not yet seen the file. Slim, just 6 stapled pages. Marked S. Brown. Sitting across from the prosecutor, coffee trembling in her hands, she watched Christine beside her, silent since the name was first uttered. S. Brown. It wasn't Solomon, Kody, and Robin's young son. Not Savannah, not any of the known children. This S. Brown was listed as a beneficiary on a shell account. And there, on page 6, the kicker, a name written in flawless cursive. Chanel Brown, Mary whispered, disbelief cracking her voice. That can't be... Christine's head snapped toward her, expression blank. One of Kody's cousins from Wyoming. I remember her? Tall, red hair, quiet, polite. She visited years ago. But why is her name here? Why is someone who's never appeared publicly, never on camera, now tied to financial fraud? The prosecutor leaned forward. We believe it's an alias. The account doesn't match any known address for Chanel Brown. The IP used to open it traces back to a cabin in Flagstaff, registered to Robin Brown. Mary's breath caught. You mean, Robin created a fake identity using a real person's name? Christine paced, voice sharp now. No, not Robin. She's manipulative, yes, but this is too precise, too methodical. Robin panicked when things collapsed. This began years ago. They reviewed the file again. At the bottom of one page, an LLC registry number appeared. Nevada. Mary snatched her phone, cross-referencing old tax emails. Her memory clicked. The number was identical to the original number for Brown Family Ventures, the one Kody had claimed to close 5 years ago. He hadn't closed it. He had merely re-registered it under another name with forged signatures, moving money through it for years. Back in court, Kody's attorney tried to stall. Your Honor, given these fresh accusations, we request additional time to review. Denied, the judge snapped. The defendant has had years to explain these filings. We move forward. Kody appeared disheveled, hair tousled, voice frayed at the edges. He leaned toward the mic. There is no Chanel Brown account, he muttered. It's a setup. Then who owns the LLC? The judge asked. Kody's silence spoke louder than any words. Christine swiveled toward Mary, whispering, He's drowning. Mary shook her head slowly. No, he's lying. Drowning means overwhelmed. Lying means controlling the depths of the water himself. The prosecutor rose again. We'd like to call an unexpected witness. The judge blinked. Name, Chanel Brown. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Even Mary's jaw dropped. The back door creaked open. A woman entered, unfamiliar, not tall, not red-haired, but real. Her ID verified her identity. She sat down, hands folded neatly in her lap, gaze unwavering. My name is Chanel Brown, she said calmly. I've never met Kody, never spoken to him. I've never authorized any LLCs or bank accounts. The courtroom froze. A new storm had arrived, and it was about to tear everything apart. Cameras flashed relentlessly, but Christine didn't glance at them. Her eyes were fixed on her daughters, 2 of whom had quietly slipped in to support her. Hands clasped tightly in each other's, she stole one fleeting look at Robin, who hadn't left with Kody, and then returned her gaze to the table before her. In that quiet, empty courtroom, the woman she had once believed to be the favorite now seemed like a stranger to herself. A realization that being chosen, in that twisted hierarchy, had been nothing more than being exploited. Truth doesn't divide families. Secrets do. The courtroom felt colder that morning, not in temperature, but in energy. Something had shifted overnight. Some fragile veil had been torn away in the previous session, leaving jagged shards of deception that everyone now had to navigate. Christine perched on the witness stand, hands clenched tightly in her lap, her posture rigid, yet her lips quivered like fine porcelain. She avoided eye contact with anyone. To look directly at them would risk shattering entirely, and she could not afford that today. "State your name for the record," the clerk prompted. "Christine Ruth Brown," she said, voice steady despite the tremor beneath. The next question was heavier. "And your purpose for being here today?" She swallowed hard. "To tell the truth," she murmured, fiddling with the microphone as the courtroom held its breath. "I was 21 when I joined this family," she began. "I thought I was entering something sacred, something greater than myself. I believed polygamy was about togetherness, about support. But it wasn't, it was about hierarchy. And I was at the bottom." Robin turned away, unflinching. Kody didn't move. Christine's voice grew steadier, stronger, though the tremor lingered. The manipulation didn't start with screams. It started quietly, with a glance. A word here, a subtle suggestion there. Questioning Kody was presented as questioning God. "I surrendered my autonomy piece by piece. I smiled for the cameras while I crumbled inside. I homeschooled 6 children while being directed to bend, to yield, to obey. I wasn't grateful enough, I was told. And every time I sought help, I was reminded how Robin had it worse, how Robin was patient, how Robin did not complain. Silence enforced is not peace, it is obedience masquerading as oppression." Her lawyer's voice cut gently through the tension. "Can you describe the moment you realized this was more than a difficult marriage?" Christine's eyes darkened with memory. "It was the evening my daughter had a high fever. Kody was supposed to come over. I called him 3 times. He didn't answer. I later discovered he was with Robin watching a movie. When he finally called back, he said, 'I can't be everywhere. You chose this life too.' That's when it hit me. I hadn't chosen this version. I had been groomed into it." A pen clattered behind the courtroom. Even the journalist froze. Shock rippled outward. "Did you ever discuss this imbalance with Robin?" Christine turned her gaze fully on her for the first time. "I did. I told her I felt invisible." "Kody leads with his heart," Robin said softly. "Perhaps you need to lead with more faith." Tears welled in her eyes. Christine's voice tightened. "It wasn't just emotional. It was financial, spiritual, psychological. I was blamed for problems I didn't even know existed, while Robin was rewarded for not suffering. Kody used God as a weapon. If we argued, I was told the spirit had left the house because of my attitude. If I questioned the finances, I was accused of inviting darkness. He never struck me, but he didn't have to. He made me feel leaving would condemn my children." Her words fell like stones in the hushed courtroom. "Christine," Kody's lawyer interjected, "weren't you also recorded years ago saying you felt peace from these principles?" "Yes," she admitted. "But peace based on fear isn't peace, it's obedience." Robin rose abruptly. "May I be heard, Your Honor?" Kody's jaw tightened. His lawyer shook his head, but the judge permitted it. Robin's voice was soft, brittle. "I never asked to be the favorite. I just obeyed what I felt was right. I didn't realize Christine felt this way." Christine spun to face her. "You did. You pleaded with me to support filming when I wanted to quit. You said not to break the family image." Robin's lips quivered. "I believed keeping the family intact was God's will." The judge's voice cut through the tension. "Mrs. Brown, Robin, do you deny gaining unfairly from joint accounts?" Robin's answer was barely audible. "No, I don't deny it." The courtroom erupted in gasps. Christine remained unmoved. The accounts hadn't been opened by her. They had been forged by Kody, siphoning thousands into a private fund under her name and Mary's. The balance last seen, $92,000. The gallery roared. Phones flashed. The judge pounded the gavel. "Order! Sit down or I will clear the courtroom." Outside, Mary's eyes were wide, taking in the magnitude of the betrayal. Christine whispered, "I didn't know." But Mary's expression was one of awe. This was no longer personal, it was systemic. A private recess examined Robin's papers. Kody was escorted out, protests falling on deaf ears. In the cold corridor, Mary muttered, "I kept telling myself it was just flustered mistakes, that the lies were to keep the family going." Christine shook her head. No, it was for control. Sometimes the cruelest betrayals are the ones that convince you the blame is yours. In the prosecutor's chamber, USBs, wire transfers, spreadsheets titled B Plan revealed money moving through Christine's name, but signed by a forged hand. As the court reconvened, the energy had shifted. Kody slumped, cornered. The judge, unflinching, announced, "Preliminary findings indicate willful financial deceit, forgery, and misrepresentation of business purpose." Kody rose, trembling, voice cracking. "You're taking them over me." "They despise me." The judge's response was cold. "I take the documents over your denial, Mr. Brown." The courtroom had transformed. What began as a family dispute had escalated into exposure, accountability, and the slow dismantling of an empire built on silence, manipulation, and control. Christine sat tall, eyes steady, hands unclenched. This wasn't vengeance. It was justice, finally, undeniable and visible to all. Undeniable and visible to all.